Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
I stared at the ultrasound image in my hands, my medical training screaming warnings that made my stomach drop. My sister Emma beamed beside me at her gender reveal party, pink confetti still clinging to her dark hair. "Isn't she beautiful, Jeremy?" The backyard buzzed with celebration, but I couldn't hear anything except the thundering of my pulse. What I was looking at wasn't a 20-week fetal scan. It was a 12-week scan of a male fetus, digitally altered with crude photo manipulation software. Someone was lying to my sister about her pregnancy. The synthetic smell of Derek's cologne hit me as I grabbed his arm, steering him away from the crowd of guests clustered around the dessert table. Emma's laughter echoed behind us as our Aunt Carol complimented the elaborate pink cake. But all I could focus on was the fraudulent image burning a hole in my jacket pocket. "We need to talk," I said, pushing open the garage door. "Now." Derek's smile faltered for the first time since I'd arrived. At 32, my sister's husband had always struck me as too polished, too eager to please. His designer polo shirt and perfectly styled blonde hair suddenly seemed like costume pieces in a performance I was just beginning to understand. "Jeremy, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Derek's voice carried that same smooth confidence he'd used to charm Emma, but I caught the slight tremor underneath. I pulled out the ultrasound, pointing to the timestamp in the corner. "This says the scan was taken last week, 20 weeks gestation. But look at the measurements, Derek. Look at the bone development. This fetus is barely 12 weeks old." Derek's face went pale, but he forced a laugh. "Come on, man. You're being paranoid. Maybe the machine was calibrated wrong, or the tech made a mistake with the dating. I'm a radiologist, Derek. I've read thousands of these scans. And here's another problem." I traced my finger along the genital area of the image. "You just announced you're having a girl. This is clearly a male fetus. Someone took a 12-week scan of a boy and tried to digitally alter it to look like a 20-week girl." The blood drained from Derek's face entirely. He glanced toward the garage door, where we could hear Emma's voice directing someone to turn up the music. "You don't understand," Derek whispered, his composure finally cracking. "I never meant for it to go this far." My hands clenched into fists. "What are you talking about? What never meant to go this far?" Derek slumped against Emma's car, suddenly looking much older than his 35 years. "Emma and I separated 4 months ago. She didn't tell you because she was embarrassed. When she came back, she was already pregnant." The garage seemed to spin around me. "Already pregnant? Then the baby isn't yours?" "I don't know." Derek's voice broke. "She won't tell me who the father is. She just said it happened during our separation and begged me to raise the baby as ours." I agreed, because I love her. But then I realized the timing was all wrong. Everyone would know I wasn't the father. "So you decided to lie about when she got pregnant." "I found a guy online who makes fake ultrasound reports. Tony Marchetti. He used to work as a sonogram tech before he got fired for falsifying records. For $500, he created a whole series of fake scans, showing the pregnancy starting 2 months later than it actually did." My medical training warred with my protective instincts. Emma was my only sister, and she'd been through enough heartbreak with her divorce from her first husband. But this deception could put both her and the baby at risk. "Derek, this is insane. Emma needs real prenatal care. She needs accurate dating for proper monitoring. If there are complications during delivery, and the doctors don't know the real gestational age, you could be endangering both their lives." "I know," Derek said, tears starting to form in his eyes. "But if Emma finds out I've been lying, she'll leave me. And if everyone finds out the baby isn't mine, it'll destroy her reputation. You know how judgmental our families can be." I studied Derek's face, looking for any sign that he understood the gravity of what he was telling me. "Where is Emma getting her real prenatal care?" "She goes to Dr. Ramford in Centerville. But she thinks he's just a specialist that Tony recommended. She doesn't know he's her real obstetrician. And Dr. Ramford knows the truth? No. Tony told him Emma was seeing another doctor for her regular checkups and just needed some additional monitoring. Dr. Ramford thinks he's providing supplemental care. The complexity of Derek's deception was staggering. He'd created an entire false narrative involving multiple medical professionals who didn't know they were participating in a lie. Derek, this has to stop. Tonight. You have to tell Emma the truth. I can't. Derek's voice was barely audible. Please, Jeremy. Just give me some time to figure out how to handle this. Emma's been so happy these past few months. This would destroy her. And what happens when the baby is born? When it's clear that a supposedly 20-week fetus is actually full term? What happens when the baby doesn't look anything like either of you? Derek didn't answer, but I could see the panic in his eyes. He hadn't thought that far ahead. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. The party would be winding down soon, but Emma would be riding high on the excitement for hours. I'm giving you 24 hours to tell Emma everything. If you don't, I will. Jeremy, please. You don't understand what this will do to her. What I understand is that my sister is being lied to about her own pregnancy, and that's unacceptable. I headed toward the door, then turned back. 24 hours, Derek. Don't make me be the one to break her heart. As I rejoined the party, Emma rushed over with a piece of cake. Where did you and Derek disappear to? He looks upset. I forced a smile, watching Derek emerge from the garage with a haunted expression. Just talking about the baby. He's overwhelmed with excitement. Emma squeezed my arm. I'm so glad you're going to be Uncle Jeremy. This little girl is going to be so lucky to have you watching out for her. The irony of her words hit me like a physical blow. If Derek was telling the truth, Emma didn't even know who her baby's father really was. And if he was lying about that too, there was no telling what other deceptions were waiting to be uncovered. Sleep eluded me that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma's trusting smile and Derek's terrified expression. By 3 a.m, I was sitting at my laptop, diving deep into Derek's background. What I found made my blood run cold. Derek Michael Hartwell wasn't his real name. According to public records, he'd legally changed it from Marcus David Webb 3 years ago. And Marcus Webb had a history that explained everything. The obituary for Rachel Lynn Webb appeared in the Seattle Times from 4 years ago. Beloved daughter, devoted wife, taken too soon at age 28. But it was the comments section that told the real story. Rachel deserved so much better, wrote someone named Linda Morrison. She died believing lies that weren't her fault. I found Linda Morrison's contact information through social media. Despite the early hour in Seattle, I called her. Who is this? Linda's voice was groggy, but immediately suspicious. My name is Jeremy Walsh. I'm calling about Marcus Webb. I think he's done to my sister what he did to Rachel. The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. Then Linda's voice came back, sharp and fully awake. Where are you? What's your sister's name? Emma Hartwell. She's pregnant, and Marcus is calling himself Derek now. He's been lying to her about the pregnancy timeline. Oh God, he's doing it again. Linda's voice broke. Rachel was my baby sister. Over the next hour, Linda painted a picture that made Derek's deception look like child's play. Rachel Webb had been a kindergarten teacher in Seattle when she met Marcus at a coffee shop near her school. She'd recently gone through a difficult breakup and was vulnerable. Marcus told Rachel he was infertile, Linda explained. Said he'd had testicular cancer as a teenager and the chemotherapy had left him sterile. Rachel felt sorry for him, and she fell for his whole tragic story. But she got pregnant. After 6 months of dating, yes. Rachel had briefly dated someone else right before she met Marcus. But when she found out she was pregnant, Marcus convinced her it had to be a miracle. He said his doctors must have been wrong about his fertility. And she believed him? Rachel wanted to believe him. Marcus was charming, attentive, everything her ex-boyfriend hadn't been. When she got pregnant, he proposed immediately. Said it was fate bringing them together. Linda's story grew darker. Marcus had controlled every aspect of Rachel's prenatal care, insisting she see only doctors he recommended. He'd isolated her from friends and family, claiming they were jealous of their happiness. When Rachel started asking questions about inconsistencies in her medical records, Marcus convinced everyone she was having pregnancy-induced anxiety. The truth came out when Rachel was 8 months pregnant, Linda continued. She ran into the guy she dated before Marcus. When she told him about the baby, he mentioned that his sister was a labor and delivery nurse. She looked at Rachel's file and realized the dates didn't match what Marcus had been telling everyone. What happened when Rachel confronted him? Marcus told her she was having a mental breakdown. He'd been documenting every time she questioned him, building a case that she was unstable. When she threatened to leave, he had her involuntarily committed for a psychiatric evaluation. My hands were shaking as I took notes. And the baby? Rachel delivered while she was in the psychiatric hospital. Marcus had power of attorney, so he made all the decisions. The baby went home with him while Rachel was still being treated for a breakdown that Marcus had caused. How did she die? Linda's voice became barely audible. Rachel was released after 2 weeks. Marcus had filed for divorce and was seeking full custody, claiming Rachel was mentally unfit. She came to stay with me while she fought for her baby. One night, she took a whole bottle of sleeping pills. The note said she couldn't live, knowing her child would grow up thinking she was crazy. I sat in stunned silence, absorbing the implications. Linda, I need you to help me save my sister. What do you need? Everything you have on Marcus. Medical records, legal documents, anything that proves his pattern of behavior. Linda was quiet for a moment. Jeremy, there's something else you need to know. Rachel wasn't Marcus's first victim. After she died, I hired a private investigator. We found at least 2 other women in different states. The pattern was always the same. Find a vulnerable pregnant woman, manipulate her into believing he was the father, control her medical care, then disappear with whatever money or assets he could steal. He's stealing from Emma? Check her bank accounts. Check her credit cards. Marcus never just wanted the women, Jeremy. He wanted everything they had. After hanging up with Linda, I spent the rest of the morning researching Marcus Webb. The picture that emerged was of a sophisticated con artist who specialized in a very specific type of victim: newly divorced or recently single pregnant women with assets to steal. The pattern was always the same. Marcus would target women during vulnerable transitions, present himself as a stable, loving partner, then slowly take control of their finances and medical care. He'd isolate them from support systems, manipulate their medical records, and create dependency. Once he'd maximized what he could steal, he'd either disappear or, in Rachel's case, drive them to complete psychological breakdown. The most terrifying part was how good he was at it. Marcus had studied psychology in college before dropping out. He understood exactly how to identify and exploit emotional vulnerabilities. As the sun came up, I realized Derek's 24-hour deadline was irrelevant. This wasn't about a simple lie regarding paternity. Emma was trapped in the web of a predator who had already killed 1 woman and was actively working to destroy my sister's life. I picked up my phone to call the police, then hesitated. Marcus had been careful. He'd legally changed his name, and his previous crimes had been difficult to prosecute because the victims had been isolated and their credibility questioned. I needed more evidence before I could convince anyone that Emma was in danger. But first, I needed to know exactly what Marcus had already done to my sister's life. Sarah Caldwell had been Emma's best friend since college, and the worry in her voice when I called her was immediately apparent. Jeremy, thank God someone else is concerned. I've been trying to figure out how to talk to Emma about Derek for months. What do you mean? She's been acting so strange lately. Borrowing money, canceling plans, making excuses for why Derek can't come to group events. Last month, she asked if she could borrow $3,000 for baby expenses, but when I offered to go shopping with her instead, she got defensive. Sarah agreed to meet me at Emma's house, while Derek was supposedly at work. I'd called his listed employer that morning and discovered that Derek Hartwell had never worked there. Whatever he was doing during the day, it wasn't the marketing job Emma thought he had. Emma's house felt different as Sarah and I approached the front door. The lawn was overgrown. The flower beds Emma had always maintained were full of weeds, and there was a general air of neglect that didn't match my sister's usually meticulous nature. "She gave me a spare key last year," Sarah said, producing it from her purse. "I told her I was worried about her being alone while pregnant." Inside, the house was clean but sparse. Furniture that I remembered from Emma's previous home was missing, and the walls that had once been covered with her artwork and family photos were mostly bare. "Sarah, when did Emma move in with Derek?" "About 8 months ago." She said Derek's lease was up and it made sense to consolidate households. 8 months ago would have been right around the time Emma got pregnant. If Marcus's pattern held true, he'd moved in quickly to establish control and access to her assets. We made our way to Emma's home office, a small room where she'd always handled her freelance graphic design work. Her computer was password protected, but Sarah knew Emma used the same password for everything, their college dorm room number. What we found in Emma's financial records was devastating. 3 credit cards I'd never heard Emma mention were maxed out at a total of $47,000. The charges were for baby items, medical expenses, and cash advances that had been withdrawn from ATMs all over the city. "Emma doesn't even use cash," Sarah said, scrolling through the statements. "She's been paperless since college." The bank statements were worse. Emma's savings account, which had contained nearly $60,000 from her divorce settlement 6 months ago, was down to $800. The withdrawal pattern showed large amounts being transferred to accounts I didn't recognize. "Look at this." Sarah pointed to a series of withdrawals from 3 weeks ago. $5,000 to something called Meridian Health Services. That was the day after Emma told me she needed money for a specialist appointment. I photographed the bank statements, my anger building with each transaction. "Sarah, look at these medical charges. Emma's insurance should cover standard prenatal care, but she's been paying thousands of dollars out of pocket." The medical expenses were the most revealing part of the deception. Emma had been paying cash for appointments at 3 different medical facilities: Dr. Ramford in Centerville, Meridian Health Services, and something called Advanced Fetal Imaging. None of these were in network with Emma's insurance, and none of them appeared to be legitimate practices when I looked them up online. "Jeremy, look at this." Sarah had found a folder of insurance documents hidden behind Emma's printer. "Derek has taken out a life insurance policy on Emma. $500,000. My blood ran cold. When was this taken out? 3 months ago. And look at the beneficiary. Derek Michael Hartwell was listed as the sole beneficiary of a policy worth more than Emma's house. The application claimed Emma was in perfect health with no high-risk factors, but the signature on the application didn't look like Emma's handwriting. "There's more," Sarah said, pulling out a thick envelope. "These are loan applications. Derek has been applying for personal loans using Emma's credit and income information." The loan documents painted a picture of systematic financial abuse. Derek had successfully obtained 3 personal loans, totaling $85,000, all secured against Emma's house. The applications listed fake employment information for Derek and inflated Emma's income by nearly 50%. "Sarah, Emma could lose her house. If Derek disappears and defaults on these loans, she'll be liable for the entire debt. What kind of person does this to someone they claim to love?" I thought about Linda's story about Rachel Webb. Someone who doesn't love them at all. The most chilling discovery was in a manila folder labeled Medical Records. Inside were what appeared to be Emma's real prenatal care documents from Dr. Ramford, but they'd been altered. Someone had used correction fluid and careful forgery to change dates, measurements, and test results throughout Emma's file. "Look at this ultrasound from 6 weeks ago," I said, showing Sarah an image that looked completely different from the one Derek had shown at the party. "This shows a male fetus at 18 weeks gestation. Derek's been showing Emma fake images from the beginning." Sarah sank into Emma's desk chair, overwhelmed by the scope of the deception. Jeremy, we have to call the police. This isn't just lying about paternity. This is identity theft, fraud, forgery. I know. But first, I need to understand the endgame. Why go through all this elaborate deception? Why not just steal Emma's money and disappear? The answer was in the last folder, labeled Travel Documents. Derek had applied for a passport under his real name, Marcus Webb, and had purchased a one-way ticket to Costa Rica for 2 weeks after Emma's due date. He's planning to disappear right after the baby is born, I realized, but not before he collects on the life insurance. Sarah's face went white. Jeremy, you don't think he would actually? I don't know what he's capable of, but I know Emma's in danger, and I know she has no idea what's happening to her. We spent another hour documenting everything we'd found, photographing bank statements, loan documents, and medical records. The evidence was overwhelming, but I knew Marcus had been careful to make it look like Emma was a willing participant in most of the financial decisions. As we prepared to leave, Sarah grabbed my arm. Jeremy, there's something else. Emma hasn't been to her regular doctor in months. She told me Derek found a specialist who could provide better care, but when I asked for a referral for my cousin who's pregnant, Emma got weird about giving me the contact information. What kind of weird? Like she didn't actually have it. Like she wasn't the one making her own medical appointments. The final piece clicked into place. Marcus wasn't just stealing Emma's money and planning to disappear. He was controlling every aspect of her medical care, potentially putting both her and the baby at serious risk. And if the life insurance policy was any indication, he might not be planning for both of them to survive the experience. I should have known Marcus would be watching. When I returned to my apartment that evening, after documenting the financial evidence with Sarah, my door was unlocked. The smell of Marcus's cologne hung in the air like a warning, and I found him sitting in my living room chair as if he owned the place. Hello, Jeremy. Marcus's voice was calm, but his eyes held a coldness I'd never noticed during family gatherings. We need to discuss your little investigation. My heart hammered as I realized how vulnerable I was. Marcus was bigger than me, and there was no telling what he was capable of when cornered. I don't know what you're talking about. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed me a series of photos. Me entering Emma's house with Sarah. Me photographing bank statements. Me leaving with a folder of documents. He'd been watching us the entire time. Sit down, Jeremy. Let's have an honest conversation. I remained standing, keeping the coffee table between us. How did you get into my apartment? Your building's security is surprisingly poor for a medical professional. You really should upgrade your locks. Marcus set his phone on the table, ensuring I could see the photos he'd taken. Now, let's discuss why you've been snooping through Emma's private financial information. Those aren't Emma's transactions. You've been stealing from her. Marcus smiled, and it was the most unsettling expression I'd ever seen. Stealing is such an ugly word. Emma and I are partners. Married couples share resources. You're not married to Emma. Details, Jeremy. The important thing is that Emma trusts me to handle our finances while she focuses on her pregnancy. She signed all the necessary paperwork willingly. I thought about the forged signatures I'd seen on the loan applications. Emma doesn't even know about most of those accounts. Emma doesn't need to worry her pretty little head about complicated financial matters. Stress isn't good for the baby. Marcus leaned forward. Speaking of stress, your meddling has been causing Emma quite a bit of anxiety. What are you talking about? Marcus pulled out another phone, this one with a recording app open. I've been documenting your erratic behavior, Jeremy. Your obsession with Emma's pregnancy, your wild accusations about her medical care, your desperate attempts to drive a wedge between Emma and me. The recording was from our conversation in the garage at the party, but it had been edited to remove Marcus's admissions and make it sound like I was making unprovoked accusations against him. Emma's been very concerned about your mental state, Marcus continued. First, you attack me with crazy theories about ultrasound fraud. Then you break into our house to steal private documents. It's textbook harassment behavior. That's not what happened, and you know it. What I know is that Emma called me in tears this afternoon, worried that her brother was having some kind of psychological breakdown. She's particularly concerned because of your access to controlled substances at the hospital. My stomach dropped. Marcus had somehow convinced Emma that I was unstable, setting up a narrative that would discredit anything I tried to tell her about his deception. Here's what's going to happen, Jeremy. Marcus stood up, and I realized he was taller and more muscular than I'd remembered. You're going to return those documents you stole. You're going to apologize to Emma for causing her distress. And you're going to step back from her life until after the baby is born. And if I refuse? Marcus walked to my window and pointed to the parking lot below. See that white sedan? There are 2 men in there with cameras who have been documenting your movements all day. They have video of you entering Emma's house without permission, photographing private documents, and meeting with strangers to discuss Emma's personal information. I looked down and saw the car he was referring to. 2 figures were indeed visible in the front seats. Those gentlemen work for a private security firm that specializes in domestic situations. They're very good at documenting evidence of stalking, harassment, and potential threats to pregnant women. You're threatening me. I'm protecting my family from someone who's clearly become unstable. Emma's pregnancy has triggered some kind of obsessive behavior in you, and I have a responsibility to keep her safe. Marcus moved closer, and I could smell the coffee on his breath. I know about your call to Linda Morrison in Seattle. I know about your research into my past. What you don't understand is that Rachel Webb was genuinely mentally ill. Her death was a tragedy, but it wasn't my fault. You destroyed her life. Rachel destroyed her own life by refusing to get help for her psychological problems. I tried to protect her and our baby, but she was too sick to accept treatment. Marcus's voice carried a tone of practiced sadness. I won't let you follow the same path, Jeremy. Marcus pulled a business card from his pocket. Dr. Stephen Carmichael. He's a psychiatrist who specializes in family crisis intervention. Emma's already spoken with him about your recent behavior. The business card looked official, but I was beginning to understand that everything in Marcus's world was carefully constructed to support his narrative. Dr. Carmichael has recommended that you undergo a voluntary psychiatric evaluation to address your obsessive fixation on Emma's pregnancy. If you cooperate, this can all be handled discreetly within the family. And if I don't cooperate? Marcus's expression hardened. Then we'll have to pursue other options to protect Emma. Restraining orders, involuntary commitment proceedings, professional licensing board complaints. You're a radiologist, Jeremy. Your career depends on your professional reputation. The threat was clear. Marcus had spent months building a case that would make me look unstable, while positioning himself as the reasonable party trying to protect Emma from her disturbed brother. You have 48 hours to decide, Marcus said, heading toward the door. Cooperate with Dr. Carmichael's evaluation, or face the consequences of your harassment campaign against a pregnant woman. He paused at the door. Oh, and Jeremy? Emma's moving to a secure location tomorrow for the remainder of her pregnancy. Somewhere safe from family members who might pose a threat to her mental health. You can't isolate her from her family. I'm not isolating her. Emma made the decision herself after I showed her the evidence of your stalking behavior. She's very disappointed in you, Jeremy. After Marcus left, I sat in my living room feeling utterly trapped. He'd systematically destroyed my credibility with Emma while building a narrative that painted me as the dangerous one. Anything I tried to tell Emma about his deception would now be viewed through the lens of my supposed mental breakdown. But the most terrifying part was his casual mention of moving Emma to a secure location. If Marcus was following the same pattern he'd used with Rachel Webb, isolation was the next step before the final phase of his plan. I had less than 48 hours to figure out how to save my sister from a predator who had already successfully destroyed one woman's life and was now expertly manipulating everyone around Emma into believing he was her protector. The white sedan remained in the parking lot until midnight, making it clear that Marcus's threats weren't idle. I was being watched, documented, and systematically discredited. Emma's life hung in the balance, and I was running out of time to expose the truth before Marcus completed whatever horrific plan he had for her and her baby. Agent Maria Santos had the kind of steady, professional demeanor that immediately inspired confidence. When I called the FBI field office the next morning, I'd expected to be transferred through multiple departments before finding someone who would take my concerns seriously. Instead, Agent Santos asked me to come in immediately. "Mr. Walsh, you're not the first person to contact us about Marcus Webb," Agent Santos explained as we sat in a small conference room overlooking downtown. "We've been building a case against him and his associates for 18 months. Associates? Marcus doesn't work alone. He's part of a sophisticated network that targets pregnant women across multiple states. We've identified at least 12 victims over the past 4 years." Agent Santos spread a series of photographs across the table. I recognized Marcus immediately, but the other faces were unfamiliar. "This is Dr. Vincent Caro," she said, pointing to a distinguished-looking man in his 50s. "Former obstetrician who lost his license in Oregon for performing unnecessary procedures on pregnant women. He's been operating unlicensed medical facilities under various names. Tony Marchetti," she continued, indicating a younger man with thinning hair. "Former ultrasound technician who specializes in creating fake medical reports and forged documents." The scope of the operation was staggering. Marcus, Vincent, and Tony had been working together to identify vulnerable pregnant women, manipulate their medical care, steal their assets, and in some cases, traffic their babies to black market adoption rings. "We believe your sister Emma is their current primary target," Agent Santos said. "But she's not the only one. We think they're currently holding at least 5 other women at various locations." "Holding them? You mean kidnapping?" "It's more subtle than that. The women believe they're staying at specialized medical facilities for high-risk pregnancies. They think they're receiving premium care, but they're actually being isolated and controlled until they deliver." Agent Santos showed me surveillance photos of a compound about 30 miles outside the city. "This is Meridian Health Services. It's registered as a birthing center, but it's actually a front operation. The women stay there voluntarily because they've been convinced they need specialized monitoring. What happens to the babies? That depends on the woman's financial value. If they can extract enough money from the victim, sometimes they let her keep the baby and disappear with her assets. But if the woman becomes difficult or starts asking questions..." Agent Santos didn't need to finish. I thought about Rachel Webb's suicide and Marcus's life insurance policy on Emma. "We need your help, Jeremy. Marcus has become very sophisticated at covering his tracks. But having someone on the inside could give us the evidence we need to shut down the entire operation." "What do you need me to do?" "We want you to wear a wire and continue playing the role of the concerned brother who's willing to cooperate with Marcus's demands. We need recorded admissions of the fraud, details about the other victims, and evidence of the financial crimes." Agent Santos explained that I would need to pretend to agree to the psychiatric evaluation Marcus had demanded, which would give me cover to meet with him and potentially visit wherever Emma was being held. "This is dangerous, Jeremy. Marcus has killed before, and he won't hesitate to eliminate threats to his operation. If he suspects you're working with us, I understand the risks, but Emma's my sister, and she's running out of time." Agent Santos fitted me with a nearly invisible recording device and gave me a phone with a direct line to her team. The plan was for me to contact Marcus and agree to his terms, then try to gather as much information as possible about the location where Emma was being held and the scope of the criminal operation. Remember, we need him to admit to specific crimes on tape. Financial fraud, medical fraud, anything that gives us concrete evidence. That afternoon, I called Marcus and told him I was ready to cooperate with the psychiatric evaluation. His satisfaction was evident in his voice. "I'm glad you've come to your senses, Jeremy. Emma will be relieved to know you're getting help. I want to see her. I want to apologize for my behavior." "That might be arranged, but first you need to meet with Dr. Caro. He's the specialist who's been overseeing Emma's care during this difficult time." Dr. Vincent Caro's office was in a medical building that looked legitimate from the outside, but I noticed several irregularities as soon as I entered. The waiting room was empty. There was no receptionist, and the medical equipment visible through open doors looked outdated. "Mr. Walsh," Dr. Caro greeted me with a firm handshake. "Marcus has told me about your concerns regarding your sister's pregnancy. It's quite common for family members to experience anxiety during high-risk situations." "High-risk situations?" "Oh yes. Emma's pregnancy has developed several complications that require specialized monitoring. We've moved her to our residential facility, where she can receive round-the-clock care." Dr. Caro led me into an office lined with medical degrees that I suspected were either fake or belonged to someone else. The recording device captured every word as he described Emma's supposed complications: gestational diabetes, preeclampsia risk, placental concerns. Very serious matters that require immediate intervention. Fortunately, our facility is equipped to handle even the most challenging cases. "I'd like to see Emma." "Of course, but first, we need to address your own psychological state. Marcus has shared some concerning reports about your recent behavior." For the next hour, Dr. Caro conducted what appeared to be a psychiatric evaluation, asking leading questions designed to make me appear unstable. I played along, knowing that the recording device was capturing evidence of the fraudulent assessment. "I think a visit to our facility would be beneficial for everyone, Dr. Caro concluded. "You can see that Emma is receiving excellent care, and she can see that you're committed to addressing your own issues. When can I visit?" "Tomorrow evening. Marcus will drive you out to Meridian Health Services. It's about an hour outside the city, in a very peaceful private setting." As I left Dr. Caro's office, I transmitted the location and timing to Agent Santos. Tomorrow night, I would finally see exactly what Marcus had done to my sister and hopefully gather enough evidence to shut down the entire operation. But I also knew that once I entered Marcus's compound, I might not be leaving. If he suspected I was working with law enforcement, Emma and I could both become victims of an operation that had already destroyed multiple lives. The next 24 hours would determine whether I could save my sister or whether I'd become another casualty of Marcus Webb's sophisticated criminal network. The Meridian Health Services compound looked eerily normal from the outside. Nestled among rolling hills 30 miles from the city, it resembled an upscale retreat center more than the criminal operation I knew it to be. Marcus drove us through the front gate, past landscaped gardens, and a fountain that belonged in a luxury resort. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Marcus said, noting my expression. "Emma's been very comfortable here. Much better than dealing with the stress of city life during her final weeks." I counted at least 6 buildings as we drove toward the main facility, plus what appeared to be living quarters for staff. The recording device hidden in my jacket captured every detail as I tried to memorize the layout. "How many women are staying here currently?" 6, including Emma. All high-risk pregnancies requiring specialized care. Marcus parked near the main building. "Dr. Caro has developed quite a reputation for handling difficult cases." Inside, the facility maintained its facade of legitimacy. The lobby featured comfortable seating, soft music, and the kind of soothing decor you'd expect at an upscale medical spa. But I noticed there were no visible means of communication with the outside world, and the doors to patient areas required keycard access. "Jeremy." Emma appeared from a side corridor, and my heart broke at the sight of her. She looked tired and thinner than I'd expected at 8 months pregnant, but her smile seemed genuine as she embraced me. "I've been so worried about you," she said. "Derek told me you've been having a hard time lately." "I'm getting help, Emma. That's why I'm here." Marcus watched our interaction carefully, and I could see him evaluating my performance. "Why don't you two catch up in the family room while I speak with Dr. Caro about Jeremy's evaluation?" The family room overlooked a garden where several other pregnant women were walking or sitting in comfortable chairs. Emma led me to a quiet corner where we could talk privately. "Emma, I need you to listen to me carefully," I said, keeping my voice low. "You're not safe here." "What do you mean? This place has been wonderful. Dr. Caro says my blood pressure issues require constant monitoring." "You don't have blood pressure issues. Derek has been lying to you about your medical condition." Emma's expression shifted to concern but not the kind I was hoping for. Jeremy, Derek told me you might say things like this. Doctor. Carmichael explained that family members sometimes develop paranoid delusions during stressful situations. Marcus had done his work well. Emma genuinely believed I was having a psychological breakdown, and anything I said to contradict her understanding of the situation would only reinforce that narrative. Emma, do you remember when you first got pregnant? Do you remember the exact dates? Of course I do. Derek and I celebrated our 6-month anniversary right around the time we conceived. Why would you ask that? But I could see uncertainty in her eyes, a flicker of doubt that suggested the careful conditioning Marcus had imposed wasn't completely solid. What's the name of your original obstetrician? The doctor you saw before coming here? Dr. Ramford handled my early care, but when complications developed, he referred me to Dr. Caro's program. Emma, I'm a radiologist. I've looked at your ultrasound images, and they don't match what Derek's been telling you about your due date. Stop it, Jeremy. Emma's voice carried a note of distress. You're scaring me. Before I could respond, a woman approached us from across the room. She was clearly pregnant, probably around 6 months, with auburn hair and an expression that seemed more alert than the other patients I'd observed. Excuse me, she said, sitting down near us. I'm Hannah Morrison. I couldn't help overhearing your conversation. Emma looked uncomfortable with the interruption, but Hannah continued speaking in a low, urgent voice. I'm not really a patient here. I'm a police officer from Denver. I've been undercover trying to gather evidence about this operation for 3 months. Emma's face went pale. What are you talking about? Hannah glanced around to make sure no staff members were watching, then pulled out what appeared to be a medical alert bracelet. When she pressed a button, it opened to reveal a tiny recording device. Emma, this facility is not what you think it is. The man you know as Derek is actually Marcus Webb, a convicted con artist. Dr. Caro lost his medical license years ago. You're not receiving legitimate medical care. That's impossible, Emma whispered, but I could see the growing fear in her eyes. Hannah quickly explained what I'd been trying to tell Emma. The financial fraud, the fake medical records, the pattern of targeting vulnerable pregnant women. But hearing it from someone Emma didn't perceive as mentally unstable made all the difference. The other women here, Hannah continued, they all have similar stories. Relationship problems, financial vulnerabilities, medical complications that don't actually exist. We're all being held here under false pretenses. Emma turned to me with tears in her eyes. Jeremy, is this true? Every word. I've been working with the FBI to expose Marcus and shut down this operation. Emma, you're in danger. Your baby is in danger. But the medical tests, the ultrasounds, my blood pressure. Hannah shook her head. The blood pressure medication you've been taking isn't for hypertension. I had it tested. It's a mild sedative, designed to keep you compliant and confused. The full horror of Emma's situation was finally becoming clear to her. How do we get out of here? FBI agents are positioned around the perimeter, I explained. But we need to get the other women to safety and gather evidence about the financial crimes before Marcus realizes we're onto him. Hannah had spent months mapping the facility and building relationships with the other patients. There are 6 women total, counting Emma. Most of them are too heavily medicated to understand what's happening. But if we can get them to the main lobby during the shift change, we might be able to coordinate an escape. When is the shift change? 7:30. That's 20 minutes from now. Emma grabbed my hand. Jeremy, what about my baby? If they've been giving me the wrong medications, if I haven't been getting real prenatal care, we'll get you to a real hospital as soon as we're out of here. The most important thing right now is getting you away from Marcus. Hannah outlined the plan quickly. During the shift change, security would be minimal, and most of the staff would be in the administrative building for a briefing. If we could get the other women together and activate the emergency signal Hannah carried, FBI agents would move in immediately. There's one more thing, Hannah said grimly. I've gathered evidence that Marcus and Dr. Caro aren't just stealing money. They've been selling babies to black market adoption rings If any of us deliver while we're here. She didn't need to finish. Emma and I both understood that escape wasn't just about freedom, it was about survival. As 7:30 approached, we made our way to the other women. Crystal, Madison, Beth, and Stephanie were all in various stages of pregnancy and medication-induced confusion, but Hannah and I were able to convince them that they needed to come with us immediately. "Ladies, I need everyone to listen carefully," I said, drawing on my medical authority. "You're all in immediate medical danger. The medications you've been receiving are not legitimate pregnancy treatments. We need to get you to a real hospital right now." The shift change occurred exactly as Hannah had predicted. We made our way toward the main lobby as quietly as possible. 6 pregnant women, and me moving through corridors that suddenly felt like a prison. We were almost to the exit when Marcus appeared. "Going somewhere?" His voice was calm, but his expression was murderous. "Jeremy, I'm disappointed. I really thought you were ready to cooperate with your treatment." "The treatment's over, Marcus. We know who you really are." Marcus pulled out his phone, presumably to call security, but Hannah was faster. She activated her emergency signal and shouted, "FBI! Everyone down!" The next few minutes were chaos. Security alarms blared throughout the facility as FBI agents breached the building. Marcus lunged toward Emma, but I intercepted him, and we crashed into a reception desk as pregnant women scattered toward the exits. "You have no idea what you've done," Marcus snarled as we fought. "These women need our help. They're all broken, worthless." His words were cut off as Hannah, despite being 6 months pregnant herself, managed to subdue him with restraining techniques that reminded everyone she was indeed a trained police officer. Dr. Caro and 2 other staff members were arrested trying to flee through a back exit, their phones full of evidence about the illegal adoption network and financial fraud schemes. As Emma was loaded into an ambulance for immediate medical evaluation, she grabbed my hand. "Jeremy, I'm sorry I didn't believe you. The important thing is that you're safe now. Both of you are safe." The raid on Meridian Health Services resulted in the arrest of 12 people involved in the operation, the seizure of over $2 million in stolen assets, and the rescue of 6 women who had been held under false medical pretenses. Marcus Webb was finally going to face justice for the years of destruction he'd caused, and Emma was free to start rebuilding her life with the truth. 3 months later, I stood in the delivery room holding my niece for the first time. Grace Elizabeth Walsh came into the world at exactly 39 weeks gestation, perfectly healthy and absolutely beautiful. Emma had chosen the middle name Elizabeth in honor of Elizabeth Morrison, the FBI agent whose undercover work had saved not just Emma but dozens of other women from Marcus Webb's criminal network. Agent Santos had told us that Hannah Morrison was actually Agent Elizabeth Morrison, whose sister Linda had been the one who connected me with crucial information about Rachel Webb's death. "She's perfect," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face as I placed Grace in her arms. "I can't believe how close I came to losing her." The past 3 months had been a journey of recovery and rebuilding for Emma. Real medical evaluation had confirmed that both she and Grace had suffered no permanent harm from the medications Marcus had been giving her, but it had taken weeks for Emma to fully process the scope of the deception she'd survived. "Jeremy, I need to tell you something," Emma said as Grace settled contentedly against her chest. "I've been thinking about the name Derek used to propose to me. He said he wanted to name our daughter after someone who represented grace under pressure." "Marcus said that?" "I thought he meant the kind of grace you show when facing challenges. But now I think he knew, even then, that you would be the one showing grace under pressure to save us." Emma had spent months in therapy working through the trauma of discovering that nearly every aspect of her relationship with Marcus had been built on manipulation and lies. The financial recovery had been challenging but manageable thanks to FBI asset seizure programs and victim compensation funds. "The house is back in my name," Emma had told me the week before Grace's birth. "Most of the debt Marcus accumulated has been forgiven, and I'm starting to get freelance design clients again." The other women rescued from Meridian Health Services had similar stories of recovery and resilience. Crystal's baby had been born healthy 6 weeks after the rescue. Madison, Beth, and Stephanie had all delivered safely and were rebuilding their lives with support from victim advocacy programs. Hannah Morrison, whose real name was Agent Elizabeth Morrison, had delivered a daughter of her own 2 months after the raid. Her undercover work had provided crucial evidence that led to the conviction of Marcus Webb and 12 associates on charges including kidnapping, fraud, human trafficking, and racketeering. The adoption ring they were running, Agent Morrison had explained during one of our debriefing sessions, involved buyers in 6 countries. We estimate they trafficked over 40 babies during the 4 years they were operating. Marcus Webb himself had been sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, without possibility of parole. Dr. Vincent Caro received 15 years and permanent revocation of any medical credentials. Tony Marchetti, the ultrasound technician who created fake medical records, received 10 years and was banned from working in any healthcare-related capacity. The investigation is still ongoing, Agent Morrison had told us. We're identifying victims in other states and helping them recover assets that were stolen. Your courage to come forward probably saved dozens of lives. As I watched Emma cradle Grace in the hospital room, I reflected on the lessons the experience had taught our entire family. Emma had learned to trust her instincts and recognize manipulation tactics. She'd also learned the importance of maintaining connections with people who truly cared about her well-being. I let myself become isolated, she'd told me during one of our conversations. I stopped calling friends, stopped confiding in family. If I'd maintained those relationships, someone would have noticed the inconsistencies in Marcus's stories much sooner. For my part, I'd learned the importance of trusting professional expertise and acting on concerns, even when it seemed easier to avoid conflict. My medical training had literally saved my sister's life, but only because I'd been willing to use it, even when doing so was uncomfortable. Jeremy, Emma said, adjusting Grace's tiny pink hat, I want you to be Grace's godfather. Not just because you're her uncle, but because you showed her what it means to fight for people you love. The hospital room filled with family as our parents arrived to meet their granddaughter. Dad had tears in his eyes as he held Grace, and Mom couldn't stop talking about how much the baby looked like Emma as a newborn. She's going to grow up knowing she has a family that protects each other, Mom said, looking meaningfully at me. Grace is lucky to have an uncle who was willing to risk everything to keep her safe. Over the following weeks, Emma and Grace settled into a routine at home, with family and friends providing the support network that Marcus had tried so hard to destroy. Sarah Caldwell had become an invaluable helper, managing Emma's schedule and helping with baby care, while Emma continued her recovery. It's funny, Emma said during one of our weekly dinners. Grace is teaching me about trust all over again. When she cries, she trusts that someone will respond. When she's hungry, she trusts that food will come. I forgot how to trust like that, but I'm learning again. I'd started a non-profit organization called Family Protection Services, providing resources to help families identify and respond to financial and emotional manipulation. The organization partnered with hospitals, law enforcement, and social services to educate people about the warning signs of predatory behavior. The most important thing people need to understand, I explained during one of our community education seminars, is that these predators are experts at manipulation. They target people during vulnerable transitions and gradually isolate them from support systems. No one is immune to these tactics if they're caught at the wrong time in their lives. Emma had become one of the organization's most effective advocates, sharing her story at conferences and support groups around the country. I was an educated, successful woman, Emma would tell audiences, but I was also recently divorced, emotionally vulnerable, and pregnant with a child whose father wasn't in the picture. Marcus identified those vulnerabilities and exploited them systematically. The shame I felt about my situation made me an easy target for someone who promised to fix everything. 6 months after Grace's birth, Emma received a letter from Rachel Webb's sister, Linda Morrison. Linda had established a foundation in Rachel's memory to provide support for women recovering from emotional manipulation and financial abuse. Your courage to fight back gave meaning to Rachel's death, Linda wrote. Knowing that her story helped save you and Grace, and that Marcus can never hurt another woman, brings our family peace we thought we'd never find. As Grace approached her first birthday, Emma and I often talked about the lessons we wanted her to learn from the experience that brought her safely into the world. I want her to know that family means people who fight for each other. Emma said, I want her to understand that professional expertise matters, that trusting qualified people can save your life, and I want her to know that there's no shame in being vulnerable, but there's power in maintaining relationships with people who care about your well-being. What I want her to know, I added, holding Grace as she took her first tentative steps, is that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the courage to face a difficult truth. It would have been easier for me to believe Marcus's lies and let you handle your own problems. But love means being willing to risk temporary discomfort to prevent permanent harm. Emma smiled, watching her daughter reach for my outstretched hands. Grace Elizabeth Walsh, you have no idea how many people fought to make sure you could take those first steps in safety and truth. The experience had taught us all that family loyalty isn't about avoiding difficult conversations or maintaining comfortable illusions. True loyalty means being willing to speak hard truths, trust professional expertise, and take action even when doing so requires courage. Marcus Webb had tried to use our family bonds against us, but ultimately those same bonds had provided the strength we needed to expose his deception and protect the innocent life he'd tried to exploit. As Grace laughed and clapped her hands, taking another wobbly step toward Emma's outstretched arms, I knew that she would grow up, understanding that she was loved enough for people to fight for her truth, her safety, and her future. And that knowledge would be the foundation for a life built on authentic relationships, professional competence, and the kind of courage that protects the people who matter most. Emma's experience had taught us that predators often target people during life transitions, when they're most vulnerable to manipulation. But it had also shown us that families who maintain open communication, trust professional expertise, and act on their protective instincts can overcome even sophisticated criminal operations. Grace would grow up knowing that she had entered the world surrounded by people who valued truth over comfort, safety over convenience, and love over the illusion of easy solutions. The greatest lesson of all was that sometimes saving someone requires the courage to disrupt their illusions and force them to face painful realities. But when that courage comes from genuine love and is supported by professional expertise and family unity, it can literally save lives. If you've ever found yourself in a situation where someone you love seems to be making decisions that don't add up, I hope our story encourages you to trust your instincts and ask the hard questions. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting someone you care about? How did you find the courage to speak up when it mattered most? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Please like this video if Emma's story resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life stories of families overcoming impossible situations, and share this with anyone who might need to hear about the importance of trusting professional expertise and maintaining family connections during difficult times. Thank you for taking this journey with us, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to let someone you care about live a lie.